Hi, friends. My name is Rhonda Michelle Smith. I am founder of Pierced by Love Ministries and Pierced by Love podcasts. I have with me here again today is my friend, Dr. Denise Parker. Welcome. Thank you for coming again.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
If you guys haven't seen our first podcast together, she gives an amazing testimony to healing, emotional healing, which incorporates artificial intelligence, AI. And I was not a fan. I'll be honest with you at first, but after talking to Denise, she really gave some great ways to use AI in conjunction with the Lord and how to integrate those two. And it was beautiful. And I just loved our time together about that. I think a lot of people can glean from that. So look that one up if you haven't seen it already. But what we dove into just a little bit, oh, so shallow last time, because it wasn't the topic of discussion, was what you do for ministry, what you do to bless others. And that's what we're going to dive in today. So you do integrative care. You are a chiropractor, you are a transformational coach, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But you're not the everyday chiropractor, and I think that's so cool. But a lot of people are going to really relate with that because they've been to a chiropractor before, so they might have something to kind of think about where they can relate to what you're talking about. But your practice is so much more. And so I don't know if you want to say anything right off the bat because I know it's going to be a lot and we're going to dive in. But let me start with this. You sent me your cards this morning, which I thought was so helpful. And this is on one of those cards. I want to read it for everyone out there. Are you tired of doing all the right things and still not feeling right? When answers are unclear, precision matters, but you're not alone. I think doing right things and not feeling right, that's probably every one of us. Probably every one of us. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I lived most of my life trying to do the right things, eat the right way, exercise enough, do all the things. And it it seemed like I would have temporary results.
Yeah.
And so much of what I've experienced in my recent decade, there's an S on the end of that,
Sure.
um, has been to address the things that were keeping me from that.
Mhm.
And that's primarily how I practice is addressing the things that are keeping you from what you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And that can take on a few different looks as for how we approach it, whether it's clinically or coaching. And so, yeah.
So the transformational coaching would if I were to speak generally, would be like the emotional part of it, whereas the other side, the integrative care, might be more the physical, although there is some mental in that part of your practice as well, right?
Yeah, I mean the coaching, yes, is primarily a mental mind, will, and emotion, soulful kind of approach.
Hmm.
The curriculum that I am using is one that I've written, and I had lots and lots of help. But it's takes the participant through a process that guides them through basically their emotional warehouse.
Mm.
And they have an experience midway through to empty that emotional warehouse. And then coming out of that, identifying better who they are, how they have intention to operate based on what aligns with them. And it is a faith foundation. There's um, a calling out to how how God sees us, how we see God in things, and so it's not void of the spiritual experience.
That's good. I love that terminology. Your, what did you say? Emotional wheelhouse or storehouse?
Warehouse.
Warehouse, even better. That's where all of that stuff is stored up. And I know just for me being in inner healing and deliverance, I meet so many people that are scared to go into that warehouse They're
Hmm.
afraid to go into that emotional warehouse. They don't want to relive it again. And we might talk about that for just a second, but there is benefit because sometimes we're doing all the things to cover up what's in the warehouse or
Hmm.
to survive through what's still affecting us that's from the warehouse. But what we don't realize is that when we will just go through and just pick through those things gently, being kind to ourselves and starting to understand, then we will actually be better in the end process for it. And the purpose is not to re-traumatize us, but it's to come out better on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. You've got some other questions. I love these reflective questions you have on one of your cards here. One of them, let's say there's three of them. Let's talk about the first one. What if your next step is clarity instead of fixing? I love just the idea. I don't really know what you mean by that, but I
Yeah.
love the idea of it. So let's talk about that for a minute.
So it's interesting because as I was kind of wrapping that up, I was thinking, the question, that first part was from my clinical card, but it really led me more to explaining coaching.
Mhm.
And the card questions on the back of my coaching card really lean me more into my clinical practice because clarity comes when we're aligned. When we're out of tune, when we are out of sync, it's distorted, it's chaotic,
Mhm.
there's no resonance. And so things are cloudy, they're unclear, and it makes it hard for us to make decisions or make choices about ourselves, about our life, and it can hinder how we move forward.
Absolutely.
And from a clinical perspective, the process operates much like flipping switches, where that alignment comes from the resolution. And it's not something necessarily to exercise, because if you have a communication loss, like the volume is turned down, and you exercise this muscle, and maybe you had an injury or something, and you're doing, say, bicep curls, you may notice there's a difference one side to the other, that it takes more effort on one side. You have to turn the volume up or the intensity up in order for that action to happen, just for you to be able to build that muscle. And in medicine, they talk about this threshold that you can only get to. You may only get to like an 80% capacity. And when resolution comes, be it from emotion or from the neurological rehab, both of those processes allow the body to almost flip a switch. It realigns or reinstates the communication properly, that allows for that information to flow. I remember when my kids were small, they would have the toys that had the something that talked, and it was usually way too loud. And I would open those devices and put a piece of tape
Hmm.
over the speaker. I couldn't affect the volume of it, but I could interfere with how the volume was transmitted,
Hmm.
or how it was communicated. And similarly, when we have interference like that tape, um, the volume on the generation side may be greater than what's being expressed outwardly.
Okay.
So the process of what we're doing is almost like we're going in and removing that tape, and it
Okay.
allows for that to.
And you do that in several different ways. Not only do you do that emotionally, but you also you had listed physical, chemical, and mental. through your chiropractic practice, essentially. I mean, you are not the average chiropractor. Like I usually go into my chiropractor because I've got an ache in my neck or I've got a knot in my back or something like that, which I guess that's fine if somebody comes into you that way.
Yeah.
But I remember when I came and did a session with you, you said, "What do you want to work on today?" And so someone could mention anything from, "I've got this pain in my left side, that they think they, need an adjustment," or it could be like, "I've just been really sad lately." It could be a lot of different things, it sounds like.
Yes.
But you
Uh,
incorporate all of that together to make the whole, to you said align the whole person instead of just working on one aspect.
Correct. So generally speaking, when you go to a chiropractor, you're expecting a physical application,
Mhm.
maybe some level of chemical application through nutrition or homeopathy, but that's not quite as prevalent. The main focus for most chiropractors is, you've got physical need to be adjusted. And what I recognize is when I'm upset, my shoulders get tight. So
Yes.
those muscles are moving those bones because of what I'm thinking about, not because I've been a weekend warrior and been out, climbing mountains or whatever. So if someone comes in and says, "You know what? We went rock climbing this weekend and hiking and I fell down." Absolutely. That the first thing that comes to mind is, "You know what? Let's get you adjusted."
Yes.
That makes sense. It was a very physical activity that created a situation that changed physically for you. But if someone says, "I sit at a desk all day and I'm going through a divorce
Mm.
and, our house is under renovations and I have to eat out all the time," I'm thinking more mental and emotional and
Mhm.
chemical.
Well, the interesting thing is, I don't, and maybe just you have a client base that understands what you do, but I, just for me, if I went into my chiropractor, I might say I sit at my desk all day, so my neck is, always like this, and I need some help with that. I wouldn't even think to tell you I'm going through a divorce. My house is being renovated. So, do you, when someone says, whatever it is that they feel like it's going, do you ask them, is there more going on in their life? Do you pick at that at all?
I do. And
Okay.
they're kind of conditioned to know that that's what to expect to begin with because my intake does talk about those things. I do follow their DOS scores, which is a depression, anxiety, stress scale.
Mm,
And so I maintain a record on that to just kind of keep tabs on where are they. And it helps me because that's not my wheelhouse, to say, okay, you seem to lean more toward a depressive kind of situation, or you're really dealing more with anxiety, or you've just got a lot of stress in your life, but we don't have to worry about anxiety and depression.
hmm.
And so that helps me as we move through treatment to know, first of all, are we making any difference?
Yeah.
And to differentiate if we've got some seriously high scale depression or anxiety, we go through a course of treatment and those numbers don't budge, I need to refer this person.
Mm, it's good.
And because I've had really, really high numbers in those areas, and over a course of a few weeks, those numbers are nearly normal or normal.
That's great.
And
Mhm.
so they're coming into me, they've been down the road. Um, I'm not necessarily hearing things that sound like an immediate referral. And many times they've already been to all of those places that I would refer them to,
Right.
that I become kind of almost a last ditch effort sometimes. But certainly a a journey that they've been on before they find me. And so for me to immediately refer out, it's like I wouldn't have confidence in their case for, or even the tools that I have to use to make a change. And so give their system the chance to operate, to heal. When it's given the space, it can do that.
That's awesome. Well, there's not too many practices that incorporate the mental with the physical as well as you do. If they do incorporate them, they're very, very heavy on one side than the other.
Mhm.
And so I love that you're really equally balanced, it sounds like, in incorporating those two. So it could be really healing for a lot of people. The next question that you have on here is how long have you been holding it together just to get through? And that's a lot of us too, right?
Yeah.
Just holding it together. And that our goal when we're helping people get emotional breakthrough is to make it where you are thriving in life, not just
Mhm.
surviving.
Yes.
And that's huge. And that's part of the benefit of going through that emotional warehouse and digging through because we don't want to spend a lifetime of just surviving, just making it through. We want to be victorious. We want to feel victorious. And that doesn't always have to do with how much money you make or what title you carry or what how your family is doing or it doesn't always have to do with those things. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I can speak great. How much time do you have?
I know.
Um,
I know.
I
I've got
can
my own
speak a lot.
testimonies too.
Yeah, a lot of that, even from personal experience.
Absolutely.
Um, I had just enough breakthrough that gave me the motivation to go to chiropractic school.
Mm.
And I had the diploma, I had the license, I had legal and experiential reason to to operate as a doctor. And I didn't feel much different than I did
Mm.
before I started school,
Wow.
and feeling like I don't know anything, I don't have anything to offer. And it really has been like a large part of my healing journey has been since I've been in practice.
Wow.
And because it's pressed me, and I think part of it has been the exposure to other people's stories and their experiences, and recognizing this is very normal. This is very much just the human experience,
Right.
and what you're experiencing is not unlike the person sitting next to you on the bus or in the car next to you. It's it's so very common to everything that every human experiences, and yet we feel so incredibly isolated and alone.
Yes.
And we think that, we forget that our experience, the efforts that we've made, could make any difference.
Yeah.
And, my family life is very different. My kids' upbringing and my marriage are very different from my own experience growing up. And that as well is not something I always remember. I have to remind myself that you have done things differently in your life, and I'm just now walking in ownership of a lot of those things. And I use ownership lightly because God owns all things, so I'm stewarding those better, and from a place of confidence, or greater confidence than I've ever had.
That's great. That's great. Well, and on the side of ownership too, a lot of people have survived things that they didn't choose that happened
Correct.
to them versus, I
Yep.
mean, for me, I had both. I had things that happened to
Yep.
me and then I made choices that weren't great either. I can take ownership for my choices and that brings me a lot of freedom actually. It doesn't weigh me down, but then the things that people did to me, forgiveness and just walking through the healing of those things has but the ownership of what God has installed in me to make a difference in the world, it really is important. And I love what you said about you had your degree, you were a doctor, but you still felt like you didn't have much to offer. And so how many people are out there like that? I mean, I would
Mhm.
venture to say everyone, because not they may not have a doctorate, they may not have that kind of thing, but they've got something beautiful inside of them that nobody else carries. They've got a beautiful cocktail, if you will, of
Mhm.
giftings and talents and passions and those sorts of things that God put in there that someone out there needs. And so they've got things to offer. And so that was a beautiful story and a testimony that I know a lot of us can relate to. The last question is, what if the issue isn't effort but alignment? And I actually think we talked about that, didn't we? We talked about the alignment, but did you want to add a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I mean, you can try and try again and try harder. And, it makes me think of the yo-yo dieting that, we try and we fall off the wagon, or we try and we lose weight,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason, it stops working. And, or we hit a wall or whatever. And we've tried as hard as we can. And it's not about how hard we're trying. And isn't that our spiritual walk?
Yeah.
That it's not try harder, it's agree with me, abide in me,
Mhm.
and your will be my will, you know, his will. Um, that when we align with what is natural for us, for when we align with what is right for us, there isn't effort. The yoke is light, the
Yes.
burden is light. And it almost feels like it's wrong because we're so unfamiliar with the lack of striving. Like this should take more effort.
Right. I
I
equate
remember,
it to, I grew up playing softball. And so we would hit the ball with with those metal bats, And a lot of times you hit the ball, you'll hit underneath the ball or on top of the ball. But I call it that sweet spot. When you hit the middle of the ball in the middle of the bat and you just feel it come off so clean and easy, and that ball just sails. When we are in our life's sweet spot, it's just like you described. Like it's just so easy. And we're flowing in who God created us to be. And a lot of times, we take those gifts and talents for granted because we think, oh, because it's easy for me, then it must not, be worth anything. And
Mhm.
sometimes we assume other people have it easy in those areas too, but they don't. They're easy
Right,
for us because we carry the giftings that God has given us. And sometimes we don't realize that. So maybe that's a challenge for people listening. Is there anything that you think I'm really good at? The first thing that comes to mind that I'm not good at, but I know other people are, is like administration and organizing and those sorts of, I can organize certain things and to a certain point. But man, there are people that have a gift for that. And you may think, well, that's not a big deal. Okay, maybe my house is a little more organized, or maybe my bills are a little more organized. I mean, think about if that is something that you are truly good at and that could be a service to others, right? And
right,
you're really enjoying it and you're doing, and that's just a very simple example. But that's an example of the sweet spot or the easy yoke that you were talking about.
right.
So what is that? Like sometimes, I remember, um, I don't know why this comes to mind, but I used to be really bad people pleaser. And so it was really easy, I felt like, to do what others wanted me to in order to gain their approval. But I think you had touched on this, that sometimes things are only easy for a certain amount of time.
Can be, yeah.
So because I had a motive that wasn't actually my gifting, I would hit a wall and I would just get so tired because I'm doing, and I'm continuously doing, and I'm not really getting the response, I guess, that I needed in return. So then you just kind of hit this wall. And there's so many things like that in our lives, right? Like that yo-yo dieting you were talking about. You do it, do it, do it, and then all of a sudden, oh, this is not working anymore. We get tired. We get because it's not in our gifting. It's not what's truly our sweet spot.
Mhm. Yeah, some of what we talk about in the coaching, and you talk about the pleaser. I was just pulling up some of the because I don't have this memorized. Um, the pleaser is a conditioned response
Mhm.
because the pleaser is very in tune with how other people operate
Mm.
and the environment around them. That the pleaser is actually in the more authentic part of themselves, the intuitive. And when I pulled this up, I kind of had to smile because you and I have talked about some of this before, and the intuitive and being open to the spirit to do the work that you do, that's it makes sense that you have been a pleaser because you're very sensitive to your environment. You're very sensitive to your internal environment. And I feel like I was all of them. I wasn't necessarily um, the controller so much, that's the leader, but the leadership qualities are starting to come out. But I was very much a perfectionist. I wanted things to be a certain way. But I think even what overlaid that was the avoider. I
Mm,
wanted to, I would just, if, because if I couldn't make it perfect, I would just avoid it.
hmm
And so the avoider is the worker. So it's just the exact opposite, that the one who would avoid, that they are going to jump in and they're going to be the one who is the hardest working one there. But the controller becomes the leader. And
Oh, telling everyone how to do it, when to do it.
yeah. And I'm not so great at delegating. That's why I say that one was kind of down the list for me.
Yeah.
But I can certainly see where I was trying to control the situation, how that um, training, if you will, that was my natural quality, was to control, but that's the natural quality of a leader. But they do it in such a way that doesn't, a good leader does it in such a way that it doesn't feel like people are being controlled. They're in control of the situation, not of the people.
That's good. So you've got the pleaser, the avoider, and the controller. And those are three coping mechanisms when used in an unhealthy way. But when you realize that those are really, I would think we all operate in at least a little bit of that somewhere, but we probably lean one more than the other. And
Yeah,
then, but once you realize why you do what you do, that there's really a gifting in there, you can start using that in a healthy way to walk out the destiny that God has for you instead of using it for coping. I
yeah.
believe that's what we're saying.
Yeah, there
That's
are
awesome.
more. There's three others. I won't go into those.
Okay.
We can
Is
talk
there
about
a
them
resource
separately.
for those if somebody is interested in those?
But that's part of what I use is the coaching. It's part of the coaching curriculum.
Ah, gotcha. That is awesome. So that leads them right back to your practice so they can, so maybe there's some other ones in there. Maybe those don't resonate deeply, but there might be something else that you just feel sparked about that you're like, oh man, I feel something there. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Denise is your lady.
Yeah, so I can
That's
name
good.
I'll name
Okay.
the six. So there's the controller,
Okay.
the critic, the avoider, the perfectionist, the pleaser, and the doubter.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I know somebody's going to see something in there because those cover a broad spectrum of of traits. Some are
Yeah.
good, some are not good. But that's so interesting that those can be redeemed qualities as well. I love that. So I
Yes.
hope that brings some hope to some people that there's some redemption there. That if you recognize that in yourself or maybe someone else, that you can look for what is God's redeeming quality in that. That's beautiful. I remember when I was there and I did the session and just had some things. You just started asking me questions, and I had some things that were popping up, things that I hadn't even thought about in a long time. And you just started asking me different questions. I don't remember exactly what they were, but they really helped us to really dig in and go deeper. Can you talk a little bit about how that works? And like if somebody comes into your practice, what can they expect essentially? I know it could look so different for different people, but just digging into
In,
those emotions, what does that kind of look like?
interestingly, the because part of my struggle with a lot of methods is that they feel very cookie cutter.
Hmm.
On the surface, the method is the same for virtually every person. because we're activating something within their system
Mhm.
and drawing from that knowledge to apply a treatment or a therapy. And some of the questions are intuitive, some of the questions are part of the process. And I say some of the questions are intuitive. Some of those questions are not only intuitive, but they're relevant to the person. Some of them are a part of the process that we talk about with every person, but it's still they're general enough, it applies to their situation. And that's part of how this isn't cookie cutter is because we've gotten to a level of foundation that it doesn't matter if you're building a barn, you're building a little closet or a house, the foundation is the same. You have to have concrete, you have to have rebar, or you have to have, the pier and beam or whatever, the supports. There has to be some manner of support, and that's the area that we're actually working from. We're not trying to, square up walls with a bad foundation. We're shoring up the foundation, and then if the walls need to be squared up, then we can do that.
Mhm.
But let's address the foundation issue first, and or at some point in the process, because it may be a balancing act. You may have to do a little bit of something because some people come in here so broken
Yeah.
that if we go straight to foundational things, we may have a problem and may make things messier than when they came in. So um, that isn't dependent on me to determine where that starts. The method of how we walk through that is allows your system to give us that information.
Yeah. I just remember going through the process for that hour I spent with you, and you were just so caring and just gentle, and it wasn't forceful. It was just asking questions. And I felt at any time if something went away that I was uncomfortable with, I felt like I was in a safe place and that that I could go in a different direction, or that I didn't fit, but it was so gentle that it felt like there was such a healing that was happening. I think some of it that even I was unaware of that was happening subconsciously, I guess, is how I can. And I love
Yes.
how your bedside manner, they would say. I loved that. And so thank you for that. So I definitely would say that it was a safe place, and it didn't feel like I was going to be forced into anything. It felt like that there was some good healing that could happen. Um, so if I would say just if it was me, I would say who is Dr. Denise's practice for? Well, everybody. Everybody, because like you said, everybody's been through trauma and been through, things. Everybody. I mean, you could pick out anybody, and even people that have seemed like a seemingly perfect life, the enemy is out there trying to, he's prowling around trying to find someone to destroy, right? So he will use any little thing. So everyone has some level of trauma where the enemy has affected their heart. But there are people that have to be ready and have to want the healing, right? There's people. So could you describe, like, if there's a person that would be good for you to come and see you, like they are ready, how would you describe that person?
Um, I would say that most of who come to me kind of feel like they're at the end of something, not necessarily the end of them, but that they're at the end of something. Transitional times. Um, I was thinking as you were asking that, who are my people? For me personally, my favorite people to work with are women. Women essentially of childbearing age, so from 20s to 60s. That's primarily the ones that I see. But I love to work with kids.
Mhm.
I love to work with older people. I work with a few men. Um, but most of the people that come to me have tried so many things. and they still feel like they haven't gotten to the place that they're trying to get to.
Mm.
And this seems to open some doors for them and allows them some passageways that they hadn't had previously. But the other part of what I was thinking about is, who is this for? Who is this not for? Because sometimes that can speak louder than the ones that it's for. Because I do primarily see women, and many times I've had well-meaning wives talk their husbands into coming,
Yeah.
and they didn't get it. They weren't willing.
Mhm.
So that's really the key piece, is that I've had some that have come to me and they're like, I don't get it, but okay, whatever. Let's just keep moving forward. And they usually get a great deal of benefit from the process. But the ones that I've had the most struggle with have been men or women, have been those that, like, they don't get it and they're not willing to move forward to try to allow something to happen.
Yeah. So not maybe not as open-minded or something like that.
Possibly.
Well, I'll just say this. I'm a wife and a female, so I just don't think I'm not gonna say it never works, but anytime a wife begs and begs and begs a husband to do something, it probably goes the other way too. When a husband begs
Sure.
and begs a wife to do something, they finally do it just to get the other one to be quiet. You know,
Yes.
so they probably don't come in with a level of buy-in, if you will, that this is
Sure.
really going to help me. They come in trying to, appease the partner. So I could see how that might not work. And that happens in my ministry as well. So and sometimes they get something, and I'm sure they will get a level of something. But
Yes.
yeah, I guess that's a work. This is what I always say, especially to wives that are in that situation. Just let the process work on you and let that be a testimony to how well it works. And then
Yes.
when your spouse sees the change in you, then they may want it for themselves, or at least they might be intrigued enough to find something that's going to work for them. Because we all think that our spouse is the one that needs to change, right? Not
Yeah.
not us. We're good. But
Yes.
yeah, I remember so clearly, in my first marriage, I was praying, praying, praying for God to change my husband. And the Lord said, "Why do you keep praying for me to change him when it's you I'm trying to change?" It was it was like a dagger in my heart, but I knew it was true, right? Ah, and so anyway, so I began a long journey of just letting the Lord do some things in me, and I'm so glad that He's using you so powerfully to help people through their trauma, and not just past trauma, but just like you said. I love that you said transition, because transition is a part of life, and it happens so often, and sometimes it leaves us feeling like we don't have solid ground underneath our feet. And so I love that that's a place that you can be of help to people. Is there any last thing that you want to throw in there that would be good information for people to know about your practice or how you operate?
Um, I think the open mind is probably the biggest part of it. The methods to find this information is unconventional, but no less effective. And it's not part of the mainstream. Um, I have an appreciation for the fact that it operates from this the participants system rather than my judgment. My education informs how I move forward. So if something seems off, I'm asking different questions. But for the most part, I'm not I'm not dictating how I think your care should go. I'm asking questions and discovering information that your system is providing that informs our path forward.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I really felt that when I was there. I really felt like you were attuned to me and my body, my emotions, and you were paying attention and moving in that way. And so yeah, I really appreciated that. I think others will too. that like you said, it's not a cookie cutter. There's a foundation of things that you have available, but I felt like I got individual attention, individualized attention when I was there, and that you were really operating in, okay, what has Rhonda been through? What is Rhonda dealing with right now, even if she's not, if it's subconscious and not conscious. And I really appreciated that. I loved it. So thank you for that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Denise. I appreciate that. That was some good information, like a little deeper than I was even aware. I'm still learning about this whole thing that you do, and I love the fact that there are going to be some people out there that are going to have physical things going on in their body, and maybe they've sought doctor after doctor, and that's not wrong, but maybe you just haven't gotten a lot of answers. But there's an emotional, spiritual, even component there with it, and when you bring those two together, you might even see the physical healing, I would think, because that even happens in my ministry as well. When you get some of that emotional healing done, you can see the physical. And so I could see that your practice would be really good because you marry the two together so well. So that might be
Yeah.
another client for you, someone who's got something physical going on who hasn't gotten a lot of answers.
One thing to note is that the clinical part of the practice is local and on site.
Mm,
Coaching can be anywhere.
mm. So like
And
through Zoom, or is that how you do it, through Zoom?
yeah,
Okay.
so it's the coaching is primarily online, and so it can be for anyone, anywhere. Clinically, they would need to be face to face, hands
Sure.
on
Sure. And you're in Texas. What part of Texas are you in?
in the Dallas area.
Okay, so if they're in the Dallas area, then they can come see you. I love that. I know you've got your website here. It's resonatewellnesschiro.com. Resonate Wellness Chiro, CHIRO.com. You can reach out there. All of our information on how to get a hold of Dr. Denise Parker is there. You can set an appointment. She is very lovely. Uh, and I say that not just because she's my friend, but also because I went through a session and just loved the way that she orchestrated all of that with such a caring touch. So, anyway, well, we appreciate you being here. Check out both podcasts with Dr. Denise Parker. They're full of such great information. She has such a science mind that I don't necessarily have. And so I love to pick her brain. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, Jesus, we just thank you so much for everyone listening today. I thank you for Dr. Denise Parker. Lord, we just ask that anyone that can benefit from the gifts, the talents that you've placed within Dr. Denise, if you guide people her way, Lord, because I know her heart is to serve, her heart is to help, her heart is to see people live their fullest life with you. And so I just thank you for blessing her practice. And we just thank you for this time to share with everyone out there today. Jesus, we worship you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again. And
Thank you so much.
who
This was
knows?
wonderful.
Maybe there'll be another one.
Yeah.
Well, you take care. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks.